You know, it is. It's February, so it's snowing in New York City. And that means there's shoveling and snow plows and sirens and people talking and stuff, and I apologize. But anyway, my name is Steve Guttenberg. This is the Audiophiliac Daily Show. And today it's about magic. It's about the Cambridge Audio DACmagic 200M. But let's take a look at the back panel here, and there's two sets of digital inputs, optical and coax, plus USB, and there's even Bluetooth. That's pretty cool. And the outputs are RCA and XLR, though this is not a balanced circuit amplifier. I say that because it doesn't have a balanced headphone jack. So anyway, but it is pretty cool. It does have MQA for those who care, for those of you who are subscribing to Tidal, at least because as far as last time I checked, the only place you could actually hear MQA files was on Tidal. Not exclusively, but nearly so, right? And I will get to what MQA sounded like on this device shortly, but the particulars are, speaking of it being a headphone amplifier, it is a Class AB headphone amplifier. It's really good, and you know, I mostly listen to it as a headphone amplifier. For my listening test, I did listen with speakers. My desktop speakers, the Adam Audio F5s, love those speakers. But for my hardcore, really get down to nuts and bolts listening, I use 4 headphones. Hi-Fi Man Sundera, Grado RS1, the Beyerdynamic DT880, and the it's the newest headphone of the group, the Sennheiser HD560S. I really, really, really love that headphone. I think it's my favorite of the more recent Sennheisers that I've heard. I'm going to put up all the specifications for the DACmagic right here, but I just want to make mention that the high resolution capabilities of the DACmagic are pretty impressive if you care. For PCM, it's up to 768 kilohertz sampling rate. That's uber high, and DSD was also really high, 512 DSD, which I think is 10 times DSD. Now, of course, I don't know if there's any music available in those ultra high rates, but and I don't think any music that I would give two hoots about, but maybe you care, and now you know that the DACmagic 200M can go that high. So there you go. As for high res from MQA, I checked out this new Steven Wilson record. I'm a big fan of Steven Wilson. I think he's a true craftsman in terms of the technology, and he does great surround mixes for Jethro Tull and King Crimson's records from 100 years ago. He does surround like nobody. He's the guy. But anyway, he has this new record, which is kind of a pop rock. I don't even know what category to describe it in, but it's beautifully crafted. I listened to that. I listened to the new Death Cab for Cutie record, which was also really, really well done. But honestly, I don't know that either of those albums or the others that I played actually exploited what high res is really capable of, because the music itself is processed and screwed around with enough that there's not a lot of there in terms of resolution into the quiet parts of the music, or natural tone, or air, or space, or hearing the room, all that kind of stuff. That's not what, you know, commercial recording is about. So it's pretty rare for me to find a mainstream, meaning not audiophile recording, done in high res, that the high res really does anything that CD quality 16-bit 44.1 can't do. Those are nice records. There were others that slipped my mind at this moment, but I don't really get it in terms of what MQA is supposed to be doing for this kind of music. Some vague, obviously, master quality, authenticated BS thing, I suppose. But anyway, didn't do a lot for me. They sounded good, but I wouldn't say I would use them as, let's say, my, pardon the expression, reference recordings. So I found this soundtrack recording, Minari, and I thought it sounded wonderful. It was expansive, it's orchestral, it's beautiful, it has great tone, good dynamic range, a beautiful, beautiful recording. And when I was listening to that with these various headphones, I decided to do a comparison with the Schiit Jotunheim 2, and my review sample had the multi-bit DAC installed. And that version, the Jotunheim 2 with multi-bit DAC included, is $599. I don't think I mentioned it yet, but the price for the DACmagic 200M is $499 in the US. So I started doing these comparisons, and in no short order, or in short order, I quickly determined that actually the DACmagic was had more meat on the bones. It was more expansive sounding on that Minari soundtrack. It just opened up more, and going back to the Jotunheim, it got smaller, dynamically squeezed a little bit, more mid-rangey forward, just less wonderful, less engaging. Going back and forth, there were clear differences between these two DACs, and I was definitely swung over to the side of the DACmagic 200M. So at this point, I decided to pull out the Biodynamic DT880. It's a 600 ohm headphone. Now that headphone was when it was made, I don't think it's made anymore, came in 3 versions: 32 ohms, 250 ohms, and 600 ohms. And I keep the 600 ohm version around because I want to see how given a headphone amplifier handles 600 ohms. So I popped it into the DACmagic 200M. And you know what? It sounded okay, but it did seem to be struggling a little bit. It felt like I was pushing it with the 200M. Wasn't happy with that load. Not in a big way, nothing overt, but I switched back to the Jotunheim 2, and the opposite happened now, that it opened up and felt sweeter. Because on the DACmagic, it sounded kind of bright and sort of aggressive in the top end. And going back to the Jotunheim 2, it just laid back. Everything fell in line, and it was a sweeter combination. Interesting. Because with the other 3 headphones, I really felt that the DACmagic was the better sounding headphone amplifier / DAC. And here with the DT880, 600 ohm, no, it was definitely, the Jotunheim was the superior model. Now, most people don't have 600 ohm headphones, so this is just maybe of academic interest, because if you don't have a high impedance headphone, this doesn't matter. But if you do, well, now you know. So next up, I pulled out the Grado. Now the Grado is a very easy to drive 32 ohm headphone. Now, by the way, easy to drive isn't just the impedance. I don't mean to imply that, but it is a 32 ohm headphone, and it is easy to drive. But in any case, the DACmagic 200M just opened up on that headphone. It was just a magical combination, and it was better than what I was getting out of the Jotunheim 2. But the Grado just has, maybe because it's old and it's mellowed over time, like that wood, that mahogany has just gotten richer and richer looking over the years. It's at least 15 years old. I'm thinking, yeah, it's about 15 years old. Anyway, the wood is stunning, much better than it looked when it was brand new, in fact. And I have these flat ear pads, and it just sounds so juicy. Because some people think actually that Grados can sound bright. Some do. Not this one, not the RS1, and not with the flat ear pads. In any case, because that's the way it came with the flat ear pads, by the way. It was so textural, and it had body and beautiful mid-range tone. It's the one of all the Grados that I have, it's my favorite. Now I think some of the newer models have more detail and more jump factor and are more dynamically alive. But the RS1, it sounds like a tube amplifier is driving. And maybe that's what I'm driving at, is that it just has this beautiful, sweet tone. On this Anna von Halswolf, I think that's how you say her name, Theater of Nature, there's some organ stuff on that recording that is just so good. It's deep, but it's not just that it's deep, it's just, you're in a space. You feel like you're in the room. Now, I don't know that it's a real room or that it's a real organ. I don't know the details of the recording, but it has that sense of envelopment, that the sound is all around my head over the Grado. I just love the sound of that recording. There's some electronics in there. There's a lot going on, a lot of ear candy, but not like aggressive, like look at all this cool stuff. It's more subtle than that, and that's why it works so well. On Qobuz, I've been listening to this musician David Walters, and he's French, but his music is, I guess, Afro-Caribbean, and this is almost like chamber music. It's quiet music for cello, kora, percussion, and one other instrument. But anyway, it's beautiful music, really, really well recorded, a lot of space, but it's just got this African vibe to it, but it's not true African music. It is more like chamber music, and it sounds really, really good. And I was listening to that with the Sennheiser HD560S, and that headphone is more transparent than the Grado. It's a very neutral sounding headphone, at least to me, and the bass is really, really deep and really fast sounding. I love this 560S. I think it's the best affordable headphone in quite some time. So that combination, DACmagic 200M and the 560S, that really was magical. And to finish up, and I think you guys like my music choices, so I've been emphasizing them more in equipment reviews, but I go way back with Tom Waits. I've seen him many times in concert. I think he's an amazing musician. There's so much going on. And his record Mule Variations is even by Tom Waits standards a trip, you know, because it's like you're in Tom's world. I have a feeling that one wasn't really recorded in studios. It has sort of an atmospheric vibe to it. And Tom's voice sounds great, but it's that sound of, I think there's a rooster crowing, and I read when that record came out that the rooster crowing wasn't a sound effect that was added in the mix. No, there was actually a rooster crowing during the session, so they left it in. And I love that kind of like a verite kind of recording thing where whatever's happening winds up on the record, and that's really cool. But Tom is such a character. You know, one time I saw him at the Beacon Theater in New York City, and he was doing a concert and things are moving along, and it's very Tom Waits. He has cute little stories to tell in between the songs. But then they changed the set around or something, and he had this sandbox that was by his feet, and he put on this cap that had sequins all over it, and he started stomping his feet in this sandbox, and these clouds of dust started, like, you know, filling the stage, and then a spotlight hit his head, you know, with all the sequined cap that he was wearing, and it sent little sparkles of light throughout the stage and all over the theater. And it was super low tech. It was just a sequined hat, and he was stomping some kind of dust to, you know, get a cloud going around him. But it was so Tom Waits. It was just the coolest thing. It fit the music, whatever the music was. I remember the effect, not so much the music. But when you see Tom Waits, it's the entire experience of being in the presence of someone who's just a natural storyteller, and he's quirky, and he revels in his quirkiness, right? You know, like that song from this record, the Mule Variations, what's he building in there? He's talking about some weird guy, and he's in a house, and like there's weird noises and sounds coming from this house. It's like, it could only be Tom Waits, right? Anyway, all of that stuff was working. It was working really well. So to think that the DACmagic 200M is the flagship from Cambridge Audio, so they're packing in a lot into a very affordable product at $499. I like it. I like it a lot. My name is Steve Guttenberg. This is the Audiophiliac Daily Show. If you're like what I'm doing here, please consider subscribing. If you have already subscribed, thank you so much for doing so. And you could also check out my Patreon at patreon.com/ Audiophiliac. So anyway, we got playlists. We have playlists for more electronics reviews, plus speaker reviews and headphone reviews, plus music reviews and interviews. Lots and lots and lots of interviews. With that, I can now say my work here is at last complete. So thank you again for watching, and I really, really do hope to see you back here again very, very soon. Bye-bye.